Coming up on Global Business, China kept benchmark lending rates unchanged at a monthly fixing on Wednesday. We continue to mark 10 years of the Belt and Road, looking at how a port project in southern Saudi Arabia is helping with the country's vision to transform from an oil-dependent to a diversified economy. And U.S. national debt has exceeded $33 trillion for the first time, with Congress running out of time to agree on a funding deal by the end of the month. From CGTN headquarters here in Beijing, this is Global Business. I'm Michelle Vandenberg. China is shoring up support to boost new industrialization. Chinese Premier Li Qiang said more policies are on the way to consolidate economic recovery and develop an advanced manufacturing sector. Li made the commitment during Wednesday's executive meeting of the State Council. The meeting also passed an action plan to clear up areas of enterprise accounts and regulations on protection of minors on the internet. China's economy is not experiencing deflation and will not face it in future. That's according to Cong Liang, Vice Chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission, who made the comment in Beijing on Wednesday. He added that based on the data for August, household consumption is recovering, and the relationship between supply and demand continues to improve.
In recent years, against the background of high international inflation, the inflation rate in some countries has reached more than 9%. China's overall price level has remained relatively stable, while the fact that the price level has been hovering around its trough so far this year deserves attention. When taking into account factors such as price levels, demand recovery, economic growth, and currency supply, there's no so-called deflation in the Chinese economy, and there will be no deflation in the future.
China's economic recovery remained on track in August thanks to a series of policy support measures. Domestic demand continued to recover, with the growth rate of total retail sales of consumer goods accelerating by 2.1 percentage points from July. The property market regained momentum after the announcement of policy measures relieving pressure on first-time home buyers. Meanwhile, growth in the manufacturing sector accelerated in August. The growth rate of the value added of industrial enterprises above a designated size accelerated by 0.8 percentage points compared to July. At the meantime, service industry production increased 1.1 percentage points from July. In the country's financial sector, China kept benchmark lending rates unchanged at a monthly fixing on Wednesday. The one-year loan prime rate, or LPR, stood at 3.45%, while the five-year LPR was kept at 4.2%. Both remain unchanged from August as fresh signs of China's economic stabilization. Most new and outstanding loans in the country are based on the one-year LPR, while the five-year interest rates affect mortgage pricing. Industry insiders think there is still room to reduce rates this year, depending on the comprehensive performance of domestic real economy financing demand, real estate recovery, and bank net interest margin pressure. China's real estate business has for years played a major role in the country's economy, and policymakers have been engaged in months-long efforts to boost housing demand and support the healthy development of the sector. One of the latest moves will be interest rate cuts on existing mortgages for first home loans, which are due to take effect next week. Ying Junyi reports on the plan and its likely effects.
Beginning from Monday, 5 of China's major state banks, including Industrial and Commercial Bank of China and the Bank of China, will cut their interest rates on existing mortgages for first home loans. Borrowers will then be encouraged to negotiate a rate change or arrange refinancing of existing mortgages, which could reduce their rates to the floor levels in effect at the time when their home was purchased. Currently, the national floor on first home loans stands at 20 basis points below the benchmark lending rate, 5-year loan prime rate, currently at 4.2%, a rate which itself was left unchanged by the central bank today. Housing experts say that, together with other supportive policies, the mortgage rate cuts will definitely help the housing market.
Chinese regulators are announcing more supportive policies, and the banks are implementing them quickly, which will definitely improve market sentiment. It's all part of the loosening policy package announced recently, and we did see overall home sales go up last week after those easing policies took effect. Though home prices in August still saw a month-on-month decline, the rate of decline narrowed compared to that in July. We expect sales in September to exceed those in August, and growing sales could further slow or even reverse the price decline.
会有一个跌幅收窄，甚至是趋稳止跌的这样一个迹象。
The new rules also say that home buyers who had fixed mortgage rates or whose mortgages were classified as second home loans but who are now allowed to pay interest just as if they were first home buyers and other mortgage easing policies can also apply for the rate cuts. According to Chinese brokerage CICC's forecast, the average reduction for existing first home mortgage rates is likely to be 50 basis points, potentially saving China's home buyers some 200 billion yuan per year, hopefully a good boost to the economy.
Lowering the existing rate has the potential to boost the increased consumption and boost the demand of the sentiment of the housing market, which has a significant impact on China's GDP. In addition, this action could benefit the monetary credit growth by discouraging earlier repayment of mortgage.
According to data from the central bank, China's home loans totaled 38.6 trillion yuan at the end of June, representing 17% of banks' total loan books. 英俊 ICS for CGTN Shanghai.
Earlier, the chief economist of Hang Seng Bank China, Wang Dan, shared her thoughts on the impact of the latest LPR on overall monetary policy stance. She also talked about the outlook for future monetary policy adjustments.
The housing market is facing a lot of difficulties, and for home buyers, they do need to lower the burden of borrowing. So that's why we see that mortgage rate has been going down quite steadily. And we do anticipate in the fourth quarter, the 5-year LPR, which is tightly linked to the mortgage rate, is likely to be lowered again. But when it comes to 1-year LPR rate, it is hard to say whether it needs to be further lowered, because the average borrowing cost it has been lowered quite significantly since 2020. So now, given that many of the businesses are also in this restructuring phase, they need cheaper borrowing, but they also need to see that economic outlook improve before they feel safe to invest. So that might take a few months before policies become more clear. In the future, more RRR cut is likely because still the banks need to see more activity and more liquidity before they could ease the credit situation. And for the housing market, the real estate developers also need further extension of many loans for them to finish the constructed housing that's ongoing. And once we see the credit cycle go up, then the total social financing would improve further. And that is the foundation for the improvement of consumer and investors' confidence.
You're watching Global Business, still to come. We continue to mark 10 years of the Belt and Road, looking at how a port project in southern Saudi Arabia is helping with the country's vision to transform from an oil-dependent to a diversified economy. China says it stands ready to work with all parties to push for a sound and steady advancement of the Global Development Initiative. Chinese Vice President Han Zheng made the remarks at the high-level meeting on Global Development Initiative cooperation outcomes hosted by China on the sidelines of this year's United Nations General Assembly. Han said China looks forward to making joint efforts with all parties to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable sustainable development and for building a global community of shared development. The vice president said it is both the GDI's aspiration and the UN's goal that no country or person should be left behind on the path of development. Han said over the last 2 years, more than 70 countries have joined the group of friends of the GDI, and nearly 200 cooperation projects have been included in the GDI project pool. He also added that China has established a special $10 billion fund for the purpose of implementing the GDI. U.S. President Joe Biden tells world leaders at the United Nations that the U.S. future is tied to other nations. Speaking on China-U.S. relations, he said the U.S. is not seeking conflict with China.
The United States seeks a more secure, more prosperous, more equitable world for all people, because we know our future is bound to yours. Let me repeat that again. We know our future is bound to yours. When it comes to China, I want to be clear and consistent. We seek to responsibly manage the competition between our countries so it does not tip into conflict. I've said we are for de-risking, not decoupling with China.
The Starbucks China Coffee Innovation Industrial Park was officially opened in Kunshan, Jiangsu Province on Tuesday, with a total investment of 1.5 billion yuan, around $220 million. The industrial park will be the largest coffee production and logistics base in China. This marks Starbucks' largest investment outside of the U.S. and its first strategic investment in the Asia-Pacific market. Our reporter Olivia He has more.
Located in Kunshan, this is Starbucks' largest intelligent coffee production and logistics base in China. It's also the first global innovative industrial park to integrate a coffee roasting factory, a logistics center, and a coffee experience center.
Coffee is a must-have for many people in their daily lives. But have you wondered where your cup of coffee comes from? Let me take you on a journey through each step of the coffee-making process, starting from the very beginning.
The story of a cup of coffee begins with a bean. In the Experience Center, you can witness the entire process, from coffee cultivation and procurement to blending, roasting, distribution, and final presentation. In the future, high-quality coffee beans from over 30 countries and regions, including China, will be roasted here and supplied to more than 6,000 Starbucks stores across the country.
In the past, I would have to go to the US to visit a coffee factory like this, but now China offers an even bigger scale for such visits.
As a customer, I personally feel safer and more trusting when I can see the entire process that goes into making my cup of coffee.
For consumers, one major change is that all Starbucks stores in China are gradually starting to use locally roasted coffee beans instead of importing them from other countries.
Previously, Starbucks has 6 coffee roasting factories globally, 5 in the US and 1 in the Netherlands. Now, with Starbucks China Industrial Park, China becomes a new key location in Starbucks' worldwide coffee roasting.
Currently, Starbucks has over 6,500 stores in China, serving more than 250 cities. Its plan is to increase this number to 9,000 stores in 300 cities by 2025. Such a large number of stores requires the support of a more efficient industrial chain.
The Coffee Industrial Park in Kunshan represents China's leadership in successfully integrating Starbucks' vertical coffee industrial chain across global markets. Lexman, Starbucks global CEO, emphasized that China is their biggest and fastest growing market globally, and this investment reaffirms their strong belief in the Chinese market. Olivia He, CGTN, Kunshan.
The co-founder of Chinese drone company XAG has been in the UK to see the first of its kind specialist training for drone spraying on farms. His company has become the first and so far only drone company in the UK to be granted a license for spraying and seeding on farms. Catherine Drew reports.
Witnessing takeoff for the first time in the UK. Justin Gong, co-founder of Chinese drone developer and manufacturer XAG, visiting Shropshire to see one of his latest drones in action. It comes as the Guangzhou-based company has won the first and so far only license to spread and spray on farms from UK aviation authorities. Regulations for chemical spray are expected within months. Currently, there are 10 of these drones in the UK, but XAG estimates that number will rise to 1,000 within 3 years, making this a much more common sight in British farming. The UK development follows a PricewaterhouseCoopers report which said adoption of agricultural drones could save companies billions of dollars, cut tons of carbon and create 650,000 new jobs by 2030. It's a market XAG is eyeing as a gateway to Western Europe.
I think once we get into the UK market, the whole European market will be much easier for us to get into in the following years. UK, France, and Germany are big agriculture countries as well. So I think it's the right time we are in front of that big demand.
The drone operators are being trained by XAG's UK partner, the Agricultural University, Harper Adams. It's recently begun running a week-long course, a mandatory requirement in the UK before being allowed to buy a drone.
What we need is the confidence of the farmer, and when they see that this technology will work and will provide gains, then it will lead to even greater adoption of drone technology in the UK.
Some students say they've already seen a demand for drone services.
You go from these massive hulking beasts of tractor equipment and clogging up the roads and eating up diesel to going to do similar tasks, not the same tasks, but similar tasks with a battery-operated drone. The benefits are huge, yeah. And the demand, I believe, is huge now.
The university is looking for high-tech solutions to common agricultural issues, including labour shortages and climate change. Justin Gong ended his visit telling students and staff he hopes to share XAG's new solutions soon.
We want a farmer to run the robots, drones, and the AI just like how they run the traditional machinery. I cannot say too much about new technology because it's not released yet, but for the next generation of the robots, it's going to be smarter, more efficient, and more locally.
Catherine Drew, CGTN, Shropshire.
In the past decade, 152 countries and 32 international organizations have signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. As the initiative hits its 10-year mark, CGTN reporters have traveled to 22 Belt and Road nations across Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America to uncover stories of collaboration, transformation, and people-to-people exchanges within the framework. Starting from Beijing, they have embarked on a 4-leg journey to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. In this episode, our reporter Liu Jiaxin visits Jazan Economic City in southern Saudi Arabia and explores the significance of the project for the local community.
Such a desert sunset has been seen by Qiao Yongdi more than 3,000 times. In the once barren land, a planned new industrial city, Jazan Economic City, is being built. It's scheduled to be equipped with oil refineries, power plants, and administrative and living areas. Among them, the commercial port that Qiao Yongli helped to design and construct has been officially put into operation in September last year.
We have entered Saudi Arabia's Jazan Economic City in 2013. 10 years ago, it was sea and our feet. The place where we are now has transformed into a modern port.
It was Chinese plan to build this island. To widen the channel, engineers must dredge 15 million square meters of land. China proposed that instead of transporting the newly dredged soil inland, it would be better to use the soil to build an artificial island nearby. That's the one I'm standing on. It has not only become the dock of the harbor, but also increased the land area of Saudi Arabia by 4.32 million square meters. The port connects to Eurasian continent in the north and the Gulf of Aden in the south, an important maritime channel under the Belt and Road Initiative. In addition, this is a project under Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, which aims to transform the country's economy from oil-dependent to diversified sectors. However, the region has been adversely affected by the civil war in nearby Yemen. It wasn't until March that things got better.
In 2015, Saudi Arabia intervened in the civil war in Yemen, during which time we did encounter some difficulties. But at the beginning of 2023, under the mediation of China, Saudi Arabia and Iran have achieved reconciliation. Risks across the region immediately dropped.
On the other side of the city along the Red Sea, a seaside park was also built by Qiao Yongli and his team.
What a refreshing place to get some air. Local people tell me that they love to come here. Someone even drive 2 hours specifically for this.
Such positive comments come not only from local residents, but also from project clients.
All the clients, they are very happy. Once you give them some line to work, then you forget. If the project is up for 3 years, they can complete in 2.5 years.
I almost laughed out loud. The comment sounded like a joke, but I could see the perseverance of many Chinese engineers like Qiao who believe that Zhejiang has great prospects. In his eyes, the opportunities lay not in the high-rise buildings, but in a land that has just started to transform. 刘嘉欣 CGTN 浙江。
Now, for more discussions on China's economic cooperation with Saudi Arabia, we are joined by Qu Qiang, Research Fellow of Beijing Foreign Studies University. Professor Qu, thank you so much for joining us. So apart from energy and finance, in which other areas does China and Saudi Arabia have the potential for collaboration as Saudi Arabia strives to diversify its economy and reduce dependence on oil?
Well, thank you. And I do think that China's Belt and Road Initiative and Saudi's Vision 2030 actually have lots of things in common. For example, in connectivity issue, we actually identified more than 5 areas for further connectivity. Everybody knows that China and Saudi Arabia worked very closely on the conventional energy, on the financial connectivities and investment, that's for sure. But in the future, you're going to see more things happening. For example, transportation and logistics. You know, ever since 2,000 years ago, Arabic people are shrewd business people. And the Arabic region, Middle Eastern region, are actually the bridge of the commerce and trade linking the whole East and the West. But nowadays, I think their geographical positions has been more than ever important. So in this new era of the globalization, I think it's the time for the Middle East to return to its glory as the business hub and transportation and logistics, linking China, Europe, and also Africa, and even America, North and South. And also, second area I think it's worth mentioning is about the renewable energy. A lot of people saying, well, we know about Saudi Arabia as the most important supplier of oil and gas, but probably you don't know that Saudi Arabia also are boasting of their rich resources in renewable energy. For example, for photovoltaic power, you know, they're a desert area with very strong sunshine, so which becomes one of their advantage, you know, for the photovoltaic power generation. Actually, per every kilowatt hour, their cost is actually 1/3 of what produced in China. And given China is already one of the most efficient producer of the solar power. So I can give you more of this kind of stories. So I think for Saudi Arabia, when they work with China, when they work with all the other Middle Eastern countries, I think their economic diversity and potential are actually very, very large.
Now, Saudi Arabia has been one of the top destinations for Chinese automobile exports, and there have been multiple investment and cooperation projects between the two in automotive manufacturing, research and development, and also electric vehicles. How might this collaboration contribute to achieving the green development visions of both countries?
Well, I think actually the #1 oil producer, the exporter, in the whole world, try to adopt the green development agenda. This is actually one of the most important signals telling the whole world now time has changed. And also, in a more realistic view, Saudi Arabia wants to, give a full play to their advantage in the renewable energy. Like I just mentioned, actually their solar power are actually more cheaper than China by 2/3. So this is actually a phenomenon. Just imagine this. With this kind of advantages, they can develop what they need. It's called light-duty industrialization. So EV is actually one of the most important industries to fit in their advantage because it does not require heavy-duty industry. And also, with their cheap electricity power, they can power up their EV. And furthermore, we know they have a vision to have a cable going through the ocean of the Mediterranean Sea and power up Europe. So in the future, you're going to see not only the cheap oil and gas, but also cheap electricity has been generated in the Middle Eastern region and to transmit to the European Union and also into the Middle Asia region and further to African region. So this can be huge phenomenon with a huge spillover effect. And with this green power and EV, you're going to see more of this the greener industrialization to be prevailed in this bigger region. So it's going to be a huge contribution for the whole global climate change.
For sure. Thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate your time, Qu Tiao, Research Fellow of Beijing Foreign Studies University. The U.S. national debt has exceeded $33 trillion for the first time. The timing is key, with Congress running out of time to agree on a funding deal by the end of the month that would prevent a government shutdown. Benji Heyer has the latest from Washington.
More than $33 trillion, roughly the value of the economies of China, Japan, Germany, India, and the United Kingdom combined. Nearly every year, the US government spends more than it collects in taxes and other revenue, resulting in a deficit. The national debt, at a historic high, is the build-up of those deficits over time. It rose markedly since the 2008 financial crash, and then again during the COVID-19 pandemic. The debate over debt has grown here amid an extended standoff months ago over raising the debt ceiling. Now, that cap, set by Congress, determines how much the US can borrow to pay for its remaining bills. A deal was finally struck in the summer to avoid default on debt repayments, but a cohort of hardline Republicans want further cuts, blaming out-of-control spending for the country's fiscal woes. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, under pressure, insists there's still time to appease both sides.
This isn't the 30th. We've got a long ways to go. We've got a lot of different ideas. I credit our members over the weekend working together.
Here's the thing, even if House Republicans do manage to pass a short-term funding measure to stop the government from shutting down at the end of the month, the Senate's Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says the bill as written won't pass his upper chamber. A shutdown may not be as calamitous as a debt default, though it would affect pay for hundreds of thousands of federal staff. It's another major headache for the Biden administration, contending this week with an auto workers strike that could put a brake on the hard-driving US economy. Almost 13,000 people employed at 3 of America's biggest car manufacturers are taking part in unprecedented coordinated industrial action, demanding significant pay rises. The walkout will continue unless there's a resolution, with the White House urging both sides to stay at the table for as long as possible to forge a win-win agreement. But from the picket line to the corridors of Congress, opposing factions remain poles apart. Benji Heyer, CGTN, Washington.
And that will do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Xiao Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.